Ladies and gentlemen, can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay. I will now call this special meeting of the Cornwall Planning and Zoning Commission to order, as well as the continued public hearing on special permit application 257, Ian and Jane Ridgway applicants. It is 7 p.m.
Is the microphone on?
The mic's not on.
It's back there,
One end or the other?
behind there. It's on the back. No, not that back, that back. According to the note. How's that? No?
It's on the side.
There's a switch on the mic. There's a switch on the mic. Okay. I'm not going to repeat what I just said. The commission members present are myself, Anna Tamel, chair. I have next to me Janelle Mullen, our land use consultant. Next to her is Karen Nelson, our zoning enforcement officer. And then we have regular member Stephen Sicardi. We have alternate member Bruce Bennett, who will be seated this evening for regular member Keith Bodwell. We also have Phil West, regular member, Will Evans, alternate member, and James Laporta,
I'm not an AV guy.
regular member, and walking through the door is Christine Gray, regular member. Some of you have heard my speech before, but for those of you who haven't, I want to let you know that the purpose of a public hearing is for a land use commission, as well as the public, to receive information about an application that requires a special permit under our zoning regulations. So we collect the information through written reports, letters, and oral presentations at the public hearing. We also require certain reports from other bodies, such as inland wetland agencies and the Torrington Area Health District. As I hope everyone knows by now, written comments need to be received by noon Thursday, the week before a Tuesday meeting. And the reason for that is these people all work full-time. They need time to read and absorb written reports. I will keep saying that until the public gets it. Now, according to state law, the proceeding this evening has to be recorded, so there is a video recording going on by our good friend Richard Griggs. Following a statement by the applicant, the following is going to happen. The ZEO has a few reports to give us about outside bodies. Then we will discuss any site walks that the commissioners might have had. Following that, commissioners will have a chance to ask the applicant questions. Then the public will have a chance to say what they want to say. And because there are a lot of you, we'll start the first round with 4 minutes each. Christine Gray will be the evil timekeeper. And if there's enough time, everybody can have a second chance to either finish or say something else. The last thing I want to remind everybody of is that the duty of the Cornwall commissioners are A, to be fair and listen to everybody, to have no prejudgments, and to evaluate each application according to our zoning regulations and the town plan. It's the duty of the public to behave in a decorous manner and not disrupt the proceedings. So, having finished my little speech, it's now Ian's turn.
Yay.
Ian Ridgway, 142 Town Street. Good evening, commissioners. We have once again updated some of the features of our proposal. The following are changes and clarifications that we have made, which I sent to you guys, but I'll reiterate them. The farm store / tasting room revised hours open to the public have been changed to a maximum of 18 hours a week, 3 6-hour days. Only one day will be open until 7 p.m. and no days will be open later than 7 p.m. We envision these hours as one weekday 1 to 7 and weekends noon to 6, most likely Friday 1 to 7, Saturday noon to 6, and Sunday noon to 6. The lighting for the cider barn will only be as required by the building code. No large flood lighting is necessary. All outdoor music will be acoustic only, and all amplified music will be inside. There will also be no food trucks. I also want to clarify the current production on our farm. Section 10F.2 of the Cornwall P+Z regulations state food-based farm products and fiber processing facilities with or without room for product display, sale, and tasting, where there's a minimum of 5 acres of agricultural produce planted on site. This includes, but is not limited to, a farm winery or brewery, end quote. Our farm on 142 Town Street currently has 3.2 acres of apples, peaches, raspberries, vegetable gardens, and greenhouses. This includes over 40 apple trees, 15 apple pippins, 90 grafted apple trees in our nursery. These fields have been in production for over 40 years, and some of the apple trees are older than me. 350 apple trees will be planted in the spring, covering over 2 acres, prior to the opening of this proposal. A planting of similar size will also happen in the spring of 2025. There are also two hay fields, over 12 acres, and 15 acres of maple sugar bush. Additionally, we rent or have access to over 18 acres of apple, vegetable, hay, and maple production around Cornwall. This totals over 36 acres of production on 142 Town Street, as well as 18 acres of production off-site. We continue to feel that this proposal fits entirely into the 2020 Cornwall Plan of Conservation and Development that is specifically illustrated in our previous presentations. Additionally, on page 7, the following goal is written, quote, promote our natural resources to attract visitors and create new business opportunities, end quote. An action laid out to achieve this goal is, quote, support businesses that provide gathering places for residents, i.e. food, beverage, dancing, music, etc., end quote. On page 8 is the goal, quote, support agriculture and farm businesses, end quote, with the action of, quote, ensure Cornwall zoning remains responsive to changes in agriculture and the needs of farm businesses, end quote. These sections of the POCD further highlight some of the many ways in which this proposal aligns with the town plan, as we have continued to exemplify throughout the entirety of this process. In closing, I believe that we have presented an application that fits into the Cornwall planning and zoning regulations and is encouraged in both the Cornwall Plan of Conservation and Development. Current Connecticut agricultural regulations allow this type of farm wineries, cideries, and farm stores, which are increasing throughout the state. We will comply with all relevant local, state, and federal laws and regulations. Thank you. Do you have any questions, or Karen's going? Oh, you want this?
Yeah, I was asking for that. I'm going to reverse the order I stated earlier. I'm going to give the commissioners a chance to ask any questions they have at the end while I'm standing here.
Don't forget your planner.
Yeah. Do you have any questions, Commission?
I'm going to ask you to repeat what you just said. You currently have 3.2 acres of produce planted?
Yeah, there are currently 3.2 acres of trees, fruits, vegetables, greenhouses, and we have bought 350 apple trees that will be going in the spring. Yes.
What would be the
Please repeat the question too for the audience.
what would be the average serving size for our tasting?
The question is about an average serving size, It'd be probably 8 ounces or 12 ounces.
So you said a distinction would mandate that at least 25% of the fruit used for fermentation is grown in Connecticut. Is that that's hard cider you're talking about?
Yeah, that is a distinction. So the question is about the state regulations for farm wineries, which if you want to be a Connecticut farm winery, there is a mandate on how much of the fruit you use for the wine or cider is grown in state.
So it's in state, not on the land where the fermentation will...
Yeah, but there's different levels of it, but that is for that part of to be a Connecticut farm winery.
Okay, you significantly changed the hours that you're going to be open. But you do state in the original that you may be open during the winter. Is that still...
The question said we significantly reduced hours, but asked that we would still be open in the winter. We envision that if we're open in the winter, it would be for less than the asked here. So we could have a day open or 2 days open in the winter, but it would not be for the full 18 hours a week.
Okay, and you had talked about having events. Is that still on the docket?
So having some events is still on the docket. It's not going to be a festival. You know, having an open house, having some ways to attract maybe a little bit more people is something we are looking at, but it's not going to be, it's just some events like that. If that answers your question.
But no food truck?
No food truck.
No electric music?
Yeah.
So,
Ian?
Yes.
Without a text amendment.
Right. Unless we amend our current zoning regulations, we currently do not allow events on farms. The only events that are allowed in town are run by not-for-profits, and they require a zoning permit. Which isn't to say the regulations might not be changed. It's always something that we're looking at. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, we will comply with having no events.
thank you.
I'd like to introduce Martin Connor, who's a planner that's working for us.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Martin Connor, known as Marty Connor by most. I've been a planner for over 35 years. I've the retired city planner from Torrington, and currently the town planner for Goshen. I've been the town planner for Goshen as of January 4th for 30 years. I've also worked in most of the northwest corner towns. I've worked in New Hartford, Barkhamsted, both those towns I'm still the town planner for them. Worked in Colebrook. I did Kent, Cornwall, not Cornwall, Kent and Warren and Washington. So I will enter into the record my CV. I'd like to make a few comments. On my way here tonight, I almost made a wrong turn. I'm very familiar with Cornwall because I've taught skiing at Mohawk for 33 years. So, and over these number of years, Karen and I were just reminiscing. She worked in New Hartford many years ago when I was there in the 90s, and we became friends. And over the years, Karen has called me on numerous times to help with zoning issues in Cornwall. So I'm pretty familiar with Cornwall. I keep an eye on what you guys are doing from Goshen's standpoint as well. With my work in New Hartford and Barkhamsted, I've worked on accessory farm uses and helped them with making changes to their regulations. In Colebrook, I helped the Norbrook Farm Brewery, first of all, by writing a regulation they could apply for with the town of Colebrook. and then later on helping them get through the process. In the town of Goshen, we have 2 wineries, one of which right now is unfortunately not open, the Miranda Vineyard, but that's only because of the death in the families of the folks that ran that. The other one, which I've watched over for all the years, is Sunset Meadows Winery. And the way the town of Goshen handles it, they're maybe a little more agriculturally friendly, perhaps, than most of the towns in the area. And they just consider that a part of farming. We didn't require any special approvals. We've had no problems whatsoever with the farm winery there. And much like Ian, they had to start off slowly, and they, over the years, have increased their crops. So, you know, they started out with mostly product from other farms. Certainly the Connecticut Department of Agriculture supports farm wineries, farm breweries, and farm cideries. They don't anticipate that somebody has all the crops on hand to start their wineries, their cideries, or their farm breweries. They allow them over time to grow the crops, and it's, you know, considered a part of their farming. It's just another crop, more or less, that they have going. I think probably Janelle, maybe at one time or another, has looked at this booklet that planners use, Planning for Agriculture, a guide for Connecticut municipalities. She probably has taken some information out of that. It urges commissions like yourself to be very farm friendly. And I think Ian did present in his initial presentation the manufacturer's permit for wine, cider, mead, which I don't know if anybody has a mead right now, but that would be nice, because then we would know there'd be a lot of bees. So in that permit does allow offering and tasting of free samples of products, as well as the sale at retail from premises of such products by glass bottle to visitors on the premises of the permittee for consumption on the premises. I'd like to read this planning report that I prepared into the record. Here's a copy of it. Dear Chairman Timmel and Commission, I've reviewed the application, plans, written statements, and reports submitted by the Ridgeways. I've made 2 site visits to the property, attended the opening public hearing September 12th, the continued public hearing September 26th, and viewed the continuing public hearing November 24th. Thank you on YouTube. That was well done. I have reviewed the Cornwall zoning regs and the Plan of Conservation and Development 2020. I have the following comments. Ian Ridgway's written statements submitted regarding the proposed farm cidery and farm store demonstrate compliance with Article 10, Section 10.5F, agricultural and accessory uses. Section 10.5F specifically mentions food-based farm product sales and tastings for farm wineries and farm breweries where there is a minimum of 5 acres of agricultural produce planted on site. The Ridgeway farm currently exceeds the 5 acres of agricultural produce, and with the Commission's approval of the farm cidery, will implement his plan for 5 acres of apples for the cidery. The site development plan by William Colby, P.E., demonstrates compliance with the site plan requirements listed in Article 8, Section 8.2C of the zoning regulations. The proposed detached accessory apartment meets the specific requirements of Section 10.1, accessory apartments and apartment uses. The Ridgeways have received preliminary approvals from the fire marshal, the building official, the Torrington Area Health District for the farm cidery, the farm store, and detached accessory apartment. The farm cidery will require a manufacturing permit from the Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection for the manufacturer per CGS 30-16D. This permit will allow the offering and tasting of free samples of cider, as well as the sale at retail from the premises of cider by the glass and bottle to visitors on the premises for consumption on the premises. In my opinion, the proposed uses and plans are consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development 2020. The Ridgeways applications are consistent with sections on economic development, housing, natural resources, and protecting community, culture, and youth resources. Concerns were raised about property values that may be affected by the Commission granting this special permit proposed for farm cidery and farm store use. There should be no effect whatsoever on neighboring property values. No expert testimony to the contrary has been submitted. I believe that the proposed use will be in harmony with the character of the neighborhood. The property will continue to be a farm and will generate very little traffic. The minimal hours of operations, 3 days a week, will not be detrimental in any way to the neighborhood or the adjacent properties. In summary, it is my professional opinion that the Planning and Zoning Commission can make a finding based on the application, the plans, and documents submitted that the Ridgeways application for a farm cidery and farm store and detached accessory apartment use at 142 Town Street meets the specific requirements of Article 10, Section 10.1 and 10.5F, and the general requirements of Article 8 of the regulations. The application proposals can be found consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development 2020. Further, I really think that the Ridgeways have made an effort to listen to what was said at the public hearing. They made changes to their proposal, and I can tell you, as a planner with 2 wineries and also the person that's helped the Norbrook Farm Brewery through, these really are farming, agritourism. They're very helpful to bring tourists into the towns, and I have no knowledge in all the years that the 2 wineries were open in Goshen of any problems. There have been no complaints to zoning. And once again, I've been the zoning officer for 29 years and 11 months in Goshen. And while going through the process for Norbrook Farm Brewery, no problems that I'm aware of or were brought to my attention. Thank you.
Thank you for that testimony. I'm now going to ask, actually, did you have anything new to add this meeting? Okay. I'm going to ask Karen to talk to us about some reports that have come in.
There's a couple things that I wanted to make sure that are part of the record so everybody knows about it. The applicant received approval from the Inland Wetlands Agency last week. Their permit is on file in the land use office. I wanted to also acknowledge the fact that this was a special meeting in terms of the change of the location, and because we could not get the library to use a hybrid meeting, so legal notice was caused to be in the paper again and was also on the town website. I wanted to make sure that everybody knows that the record also includes approval from Torrington Area Health. I think that Bill Colby might have referenced it last month, but it is in the record. And the other thing I do want to state is everything that was received in my office prior to 12 noon last Thursday was put up on the website, and everything that was received in my office up till 2 o'clock this afternoon, including information from Mr. Ingersoll's attorney, has been made part of the record. Otherwise, anything else had to be brought to the meeting tonight to be made part of the record.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to ask if there are any site reports from the commissioners. James? Although I announced at our last continued public hearing that we'd be making a commission site walk, the applicant requested individual site walks. And of course, we have to honor the applicants.
Thanks. No, I did do a site walk. Thanks for allowing us to do that. Everything seemed in order. The distances certainly complied with the setbacks, as well as distances to the neighbors were extreme in this case, as opposed to the original plan. So thanks for making those adjustments. I did see also that the two-way, or the driveway, then having a second driveway would probably be necessary. So thanks for making that adjustment to have two parallel driveways, since I think cross-traffic would have been an issue. Otherwise, the site was certainly dry enough for what we were expecting, or what I was expecting, considering the wet weather we've had. So I didn't see any issues. Thanks.
I also made a site walk. It was a very long walk down the driveway to the new site. It was beautiful and isolated, with lots of trees in the background. The only house I could see was a small piece of Joe Ellis's house. I was very impressed that the Ridgeways were willing to go to the kind of expense that moving their project entails in order to ensure that the neighbors can keep their privacy and quality of life, because I am absolutely convinced that they will have that.
I'd just like to say I also made a site walk.
Please.
And yes, the Ridgeways moved the project within over 1,000 feet.
Closer to that.
Thank you. So it looks like they're in compliance with our regulations.
Pardon me? I couldn't hear that. Oh, that's because we had accidentally turned it off. Steve?
I said it looks like the Ridgeways are in compliance with not just our regulations, with our regulations.
Okay, finally, the turn of the public.
I should say one thing, speaking of site.
Okay, Karen has one more.
In all transparency, I would like to say that I have visited the site both as a zoning enforcement officer and the inland wetlands enforcement officer here in the town of Cornwall. I've been here since 2007. I also was an employee of the town as a program administrator of the Northwest Conservation District from 2013, March of 2013 to August of 2023. I have been on the Ridgeway site on both this side, the winery side, and the rest of the side in my employment here in the town of Cornwall, and as a Northwest Conservation District employee that was aware of the conservation easement on the Ridgeway property. I have been on the site and been given tours of many parts of the site, including the areas that there's apple trees growing very similar to the ones that grew on my farm back in Broadbrook for 40 or 50 years of the grizzled residency. So I wanted to say that in full disclosure that I have been on the Ridgeway site many times over the years.
Thank you, Karen. We're going to finally ask the public to raise their hands if they want to speak and come forward for to stand in front of the commission, state your name, and we'll use the microphone Christine will time you. And I see Richard Dolan's hand, and then Maggie next.
Hello, my name is Richie Dolan. My address is 163 Cornwall Hollow Road. There's been two issues brought up in the past two meetings. First, the question of, is this agriculture? Second, why does it have to be so close to the road? To answer the first one, I don't know how this could be looked at as anything other than agriculture. If a farmer grows raspberries, blueberries, and strawberries and turns them into jelly or pies, what's that considered? If a dairy farmer takes a portion of their milk and turns it into butter, cheese, or ice cream, what's that considered? What people need to realize is, like so many aspects of our economy, agriculture has changed. 80 years ago, my grandfather was milking around 30 cows on Maple Hill, and like so many other dairy farmers of that time, it was more than enough to support an entire family while being the sole provider. Being a third-generation farmer, if I was trying to make a living the same way my grandfather did, it'd be downright impossible. Over the decades, the farmer's been forced to get away from dairy and has now changed to hay dealing. We've expanded our pig operation, so with my wife working full-time, we're able to stay living in this town and raise a family. In order for people to stay with agriculture, they have no choice but to adjust with the times, and this is no different. For the second issue, people wanted to know why it had to be so close to the road. So the Ridgway spent all the time and money moving it 1,100 feet off the road. Then we realized that that wasn't really the concern all along, so they had to switch up the argument to, what about all the people leaving the site re-intoxicated? There was questions like, who will monitor these people when they go blasting out of the Ridgway's driveway, gravel flying, rubber burning, vehicles swerving all over the road? Being a runner for just over 20 years, I myself immediately became concerned for my own safety because that's one of my main routes. I don't want to end up under the axle of a Ford pickup truck or find myself on the hood of a Tesla. Then after some careful thought, I asked a couple of members of the Creamville Lake Association, which, as a lot of you know, is about a mile down the road, if that was considered a dry club. They laughed and responded, no. You can bring as much booze as you want, whenever you want, and there's no one monitoring that place. And my fears immediately went away because I'm still standing after 2+ decades running on Town Street and all the surrounding roads. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Dolan?
Mr. Dolan?
Yes.
We'd like a copy of the writs.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, Maggie, can you come forward?
Also from my neighbor, Sally O'Connell. Do I read that or do I hand it to you?
You can read it because I told Mr. Ingersoll that he could read some of the letters he has brought from neighbors. Go right ahead. Make sure your mouth is close to the microphone.
This is from Sally and Kevin O'Connell on Cherry Hill Road. We are in favor of the farm cidery, the farm store, and detached accessory apartment at 142 Town Street, as proposed by Ian and Jane Ridgway. It is a well-thought-out proposal which will benefit the town of Cornwall. They have clearly given much thought to the proposal and have listened to concerns expressed by others. They have adapted and changed their proposal to align with some of those concerns while continuing to address the applicable regulations. Sally O'Connell, Kevin O'Connell.
Thank you.
And I submitted a letter at the beginning of this, which was about how I felt the application conformed to both the zoning regulations and the town plan. And I'm not withdrawing that. This is just in addition, right?
Yeah.
My previous letter is still in force. Okay, this one is more about farming. It's not as funny as Richie's. When I was growing up in the 40s and 50s, farm families like the Harts and the Hurlberts could raise 8 children on smallish holdings and send them on to college and graduate school. The Scovilles, Heddens, Golds, O'Donnells, Russes, and Calhouns only had 4 or 5 kids, but also managed very nicely. Sadly, this is no longer farming reality, and agricultural land use has had to adjust accordingly, with the state's right to farm laws weighing in to underscore the importance of this activity in the face of any perceived conflicts. Twice in recent memory...
Closer to your mouth, please.
What?
Just a little closer to your mouth.
I just didn't want it to scream.
Well, if it does, we'll back off.
Twice in recent memory, there have been challenges to other than strictly nostalgic farm operations, where material produced elsewhere is brought in and becomes part of a local agricultural enterprise. Maple Hill Farm's hay business and Creed Hill Farm's importation of out-of-town manure. In both of these cases, the Commissioner of Agriculture issued a personal approval, and the businesses thrived and the farms survived. All over town, there are fields that would have been completely lost to bittersweet or multiflora if for decades enterprising farmers hadn't roamed far and wide to cut and carry off the hay back to their own operations. Most people making and selling maple syrup tap trees beyond those that they own. In this context, the question of what other farms the apples used in Ridgway cider come from while the bulk of their own trees mature seems immaterial. I've read the submissions on the P+Z website and feel as though the objections raised by Cooper and Ellis and the Ingersolls have either been answered by changes to the application or can be addressed by the Commission. Like Richie, I'm somehow not alarmed by the specter of alcohol use on this site. The cases given by Attorney Williams seem a little like an elephant sitting on a mouse. Alcohol is presumably consumed up and down Town Street without any restriction as to frequency or time of day, not to mention larger alcohol-fueled gatherings at such places as the Creed Hill Lake Association or the Cornwall Library. Having music doesn't make this Altamont or even Woodstock. The Ridgway parents are, after all, the nearest neighbors. I hope you'll approve this application. Thank you.
Would you mind if I allowed the people in the audience to know that you also are an attorney?
No, I mean, I'm so...
Yeah, she was also a probate judge. And furthermore, she was on this commission for decades and was the clerk of this commission for decades. So I think we should put some testimony rises above others. Anybody else? Somebody's moving forward. He stood up before I even had a chance. I believe this is Chris Hopkins. Thank you.
So, okay. I'm speaking in favor of the application, and having run the dairy farm down here in the south end of town for 12 years or so, recognizing that the more opportunities we allow people that are consuming the food we produce to actually know what goes on in the farm, and that exchange, I think, will help us all in the long run. We need to remake those connections.
He was blessedly brief. I see Terry Burke's hand. And then Jill Cutler. Sorry, Jill.
Terry Burke, Cornwall Bridge. Back in the 60s, I had the good fortune to spend a year studying in Somerset, which is a crucible of the cider production area in Britain. And I had a month off and I went cycling. And I actually planned a lot of my cycling to the villages where I knew there was a cider mill. And I found the cider mill was very, very much the center of the community. You met everybody there, the farmers and everything, and it really contributed to the farming community and the whole community of each village I cycled through. So I see nothing but good that developing a cider mill in Cornwall can bring. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill.
I'm Jill Cutler. I was the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I'm here to speak in favor of the cidery. From the zoning point of view, it ticks all the boxes. I was one of the people who helped develop the town plan of 2020. It ticks all the boxes there too. We need something like this. I think it would be a very good thing. I wanted to speak on behalf of the farmers, but the farmers don't need me to speak on their behalf. The one thing I will say is that the beautiful white houses that we so admire, the great vistas of the fields, those are things that farmers made with backbreaking work. We can't replace them. They're irreplaceable.
Yes, I see another Dolan here.
50 years ago, he'd always be here. Where is he today? Good evening, I'm Richard Dolan. I live on 12 Cherry Hill Road, and I've been there for 48 years. I guess I consider myself old Cornwall because of my beliefs in the town and farming. I was there when the bus almost crashed. And I think we need to go back to that, welcoming new businesses and wishing them well and not shooting them down because it doesn't fit someone's idea of what Cornwall should be. We have committees in this town, how to get more kids in our schools, how to develop our economic development. And here's a young man from this town who was born in this town and is wanting to expand their agriculture operation. Anyone in farming and agriculture can tell you, farming doesn't fit into a perfect box. Every day is different. You have to come up with new ideas. If you're going to succeed and make a living, you have to diversify, as my son said. And the bottom line is, any farmer will tell you, it's way easier to sell your land to a developer or a solar person than it is to get up and work 12 or 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. So on behalf of my family, and I hope a lot of other people, we feel that we should support Ian in his endeavors with all our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you. No talking to the reporter during the meeting, please. I see Jeremy Brecker in the back.
Hi folks, it's great to see you and be here, and also
it's
great to see you and great to see all the folks who are concerned and turning out. You don't get a turnout like this in every town of people willing to take a constructive approach to a town decision. I'm Jeremy Brecker. I live on Yelping Hill Road, right off Town Street. We're technically part of North Cornwall. And I've been there since 1949. I'm also a Connecticut historian and author of the text for the Cornwall Historical Society book, Cornwall in Pictures. And I want to do a little bit to put this decision in historical context. Cornwall was, of course, for most of its history, a farm community, and the loss of farms over recent decades has been a saddening event for many of us. Historically, farms in Cornwall depended on combining a variety of activities in order to be economically viable. This is nothing new at all. The Connecticut Agriculture Extension Service did a study of rural Litchfield County and found that a pattern of piecing together a living out of diverse activities by area farmers reflected the fact that the tradition of the Yankee handyman and jack of all trades still persists, a survival of the self-sufficient economy. This is now happening as part of the current revival of agriculture in Cornwall, notably the rise of the resurrection of the maple syrup industry, which has been an important piece making it possible for our farmers to continue. I just want to say a word about the traditions of cider. This is a quote from a historian who at that time was the editor of Yankee magazine. Throughout much of the 18th and early 19th centuries, it was the most common beverage in New England. Cheap and easy to produce from local seedling apples. It was kept longer than milk, and in many places was safer to drink than the water. And it was especially important because cider was often delivered directly to the warming houses that adjoined the churches when, on days like this and much colder ones, the people, after listening to 2 or 3 or 4 hours of a sermon, would go next door to the warming house to get warm, and part of that warming was the availability of cider. So Cornwall's long struggled with the question of how to remain a rural town with a quaint but treasured way of life, while also providing a way for people to make a living. I can think of no form of economic activity that would do more to preserve and reestablish our traditional Cornwall way of life, notably our heritage as a farming community, while also providing a viable economic base for the present and the future. As a North Cornwall neighbor, I heartily endorse the proposal for a cidery on Town Street. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, Richard Bramley, I saw your hand first. Okay, I keep missing someone apparently. I apologize. After Richard.
Thank you. My name is Richard Bramley, and I have 3 major points and possibly a simple survey. Point 1, the Ridgeway Farm is an ongoing, established, diversified farm and has been so for over 40 years and is entitled to have a cidery. The Ridgeway Farm plans to have in place 5 acres of planted apple trees this spring. They're planting the orchard and planning the needed facilities as simultaneous events. They are entitled to have the cidery based on state law and Connecticut Farm Winery and Cidery regulations, which encourages farm diversification. There is no denying this application, as it is allowed by and encouraged by state law, and all aspects of this application are encouraged by parts of the town plan. An accessory apartment with or without the farm manager living there. Encouragement of small business and encouragement of farming. My second point, references the inaccurate and inflammatory portrayal of this application. Rumors and statements insinuating that this application would lead to a package store or a bar is as ludicrous and inaccurate as it would lead to gambling or prostitution. You should be ashamed for being so inaccurate and inflammatory. I own the only legally allowed licensed package store in the town of Cornwall. This is based on Liquor Commission regulations and Cornwall's population. Any licensed entity selling alcohol-based products requires a permittee. This includes all package stores, restaurants, grocery stores, wineries, etc. This person, the permittee, is the lawfully designated responsible person for that license. I would assume that Ian would be that person with the license. A mile down the road from this application, there is another facility, Cream Hill Lake Association. There is no liquor license, there is no permittee, and there are 200 member families and guests. There is alcohol consumption, not tasting, that is individually self-administered. There's also live music and food truck events. I'm not implying that there's any problems at Cream Hill Lake Association. In fact, I may provide much of the alcohol consumed there. But many of the people that are members of Cream Hill Lake Association are insinuating that the cidery tasting would be a problem. Point 3, control and compromise. The control that P+Z does have are in the details. Parking, lighting, music, hours of operation, to name a couple. But you should not over-regulate this and restrict and choke this application into a non-functioning, non-viable entity. Compromises need to be made on all sides. To loosely quote the Rolling Stones, you can't always get what you want, but you get what you need. Major compromises have been made by the applicant, and it is about time some compromises are made by the opponents. My 4 minutes are up.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, even though you look very familiar.
Jane Harold, also in Cornwall. And I didn't write this out neatly, so you'll have to bear with me. I live very close to Mohawk Mountain, and I just want to, because I feel that fear has been the motivating thing on the opposition to Ian's proposal, I wanted to mention I live there. And if that were being proposed to you today, I'm sure there would be people saying they're afraid of the noise of snowmaking, of the hundreds of cars, their food concessions in there, their lights at night. And I want to say that none of it is a problem, okay? And it's a much bigger operation than what Ian is proposing. Ian's proposal is modest, with limited hours, no food trucks, only acoustic music. And it seems to me it's a very natural fit, farm-related and home-based, which to me seems like the best model for economic development in Cornwall. There are very few opportunities for young entrepreneurs if this sort of business is not allowed. If Ian has met all of the requirements of Torrington Health, the wetlands people, the building codes, and so on, I believe he should be encouraged and congratulated. It's not easy to launch a business, and all the businesses in town benefit when any one of them succeeds. It should be possible to both live and work here. Let's put fear aside, support our neighbor, and trust that the cider barn will be a comfortable presence and a benefit to the whole town. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. All right, I see a woman there. I don't know her name, but she'll tell us.
Good evening. My name's Jane Garmy. I live on Cogswell Road, and I wanted to talk to one point in the application, in the Ridgeway application. I'm sure many of you were present or heard about the very successful evening that was organized this summer by Park and Rec on the green out here in Cornwall Village. There was music, food, at least 200 people, families, friends, kids, dogs. Everyone had a great time. Cars lined all the surrounding roads, and it was a loud, noisy, and very enjoyable community gathering held in public space. Now, please try to imagine a similar gathering with food, drink, loud music happening not once, not twice, but up to 4 times, not on the Cornwall Village Green, but in a quiet residential neighborhood. This is exactly what the new update to the Ridgeway's original application now states to be a part of their plan. In their very own words, they propose to hold up to 4 larger events at the farm to celebrate and promote local agriculture and cider, where there will be food and alcohol served with music and entertainment. Their words. Actually, there's a term for this kind of activity. It's called agritainment. And the definition of agritainment is a commercial enterprise at a working farm, ranch, or agricultural plant conducted for the enjoyment of visitors. I'm sorry, I'm getting that generates supplemental income for the owner and is designed to draw in locals with various attractions. The sky is actually the limit here. Without rules and regulations governing a local business, farms can get very creative. Popular agritainment options include things like picking fruit and vegetables, corn mazes, hay rides, pumpkin patches, petting zoos and cooking classes. And in time, will there be any limitation to the cidery bar becoming a rented out venue for weddings and large parties? The applicant stated that all of the proposed uses at our property are permitted by the current Cornwall planning and zoning regulations and encouraged in Cornwall's plan of conservation and development. But as we just heard from Anna, that is absolutely not the case. I would urge the commission, absolutely to not make a change in their regulations and not to give their imprimatur to a venture that, if once approved, will be hard, if not impossible, to monitor, limit, or control. How could large events with loud music, food, large numbers of people not seriously impact on the value of property and the quality of the life for those who live in that neighborhood? Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
I can give you this, but I need some changes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
All right. Wait for Jane to finish up. Jim Stewart, 19 Town Street. I, along with the other residents of Cornwall, appreciate the opportunity to speak about our thoughts on SP 257. I think everybody in town can get behind the Ridgeways having an orchard. I think almost everybody in town can get behind the Ridgeways producing cider, hard cider, regular cider, whatever type of cider they want to do. I think what you have heard from residents of the town is concern about the retail aspects of what Ian and Jane have proposed. And many people have spoken much more eloquently than I can about that, but I wanted to talk a little bit about ongoing rules and regulations depending on what actually happens here. Now, I heard Richard just refer to all of the restrictions that I didn't actually understand or had not heard that the Commission was planning to impose on what the Ridgeways were planning to do here. And the concerns I've had basically been around traffic, lighting and noise, alcohol consumption, and we know that's a hot button, and then ongoing operations. Traffic, I know the Ridgeways have said this is not going to materially increase or only incrementally increase traffic. They have to be hoping that's not true, right? I mean, to have this business work, they need to have people come to the cidery, they need to have people come to the farm store. And I do acknowledge that they had said, I think in the original meeting, that they would encourage the delivery of apples and the supplies they need for production and the removal of product and waste to a single day a week, which I think is wonderful. But I haven't seen any definitive plans around that would be indeed the case, and whether that is something that the Commission can get behind and support. Lighting and noise, the most recent information from the Ridgeways was there would be no floodlights, which I just don't see how that's practical if the farm stand and the cidery are going to be open until 7 o'clock one night a week, open until November. The sun sets at 4:30 at the end of November. you're going to need some sort of lighting. You've got 8 parking spaces, you've got a retail venue that people are coming into. So I think we need something around what the lighting restrictions could or could not be. Alcohol consumption on site. The concern here that I have at least is people monitoring that. From what Ian has said, this is going to be basically 1 or 2 employees. We're going to have a number of guests there. Some people may be outside. Will we require training of the people working there to be able to handle patrons? Because we all know patrons can be unruly, and patrons after a few drinks can be really unruly. Ongoing operations. And I'm going to do my best here to measure up to Robbie Dolan. I'm not sure you'll appreciate that or not, but are there going to be strict guidelines that are laid out for what is and isn't permissible on the site? I'm a chemist by training. I'm not a practicing chemist. But there's one thing I remembered from my studies that I think is relevant here, and believe it or not, that is the second law of thermodynamics, which loosely paraphrased, it states, the universe left to its own devices will tend to move to maximum disorder. If there are not regulations imposed upon what can be done at the site, okay, then I think you need to have some sort of external forces that can continue and monitor this on an ongoing basis. And I look to you and the commission to be the people who can help set those guidelines. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'd like to thank Planning and Zoning Commission very much for being willing to hear all of the concerns that residents in the area have about the proposal, as well as the things that we love about this proposal. I went on record last time saying how wonderful it would be to have this succeed, to have the farm producing apples that could be cider and hard cider. We love it. There isn't anybody that doesn't want this to succeed. But the concern that I still feel with the revisions, which we're very appreciative of, the revisions that you have done, relates specifically to creating the venue for bringing in the public for the consumption of hard cider alcohol in our residential neighborhood. We are historically, up in North Cornwall, a farming community. That's why we all love it. But it's now also partially a residential community. There are a lot of residences in the area, and the owners of these residences, the people who've been living there, many of them for 100 years, families for 100 years that have been residents in that area, what's going on in their minds about this, they are concerns, and we're very happy that you are listening to what they are. We feel, many of us in the area, that the peaceful coexistence of about 200 years of residents and farmers really should dictate what we do here, that we want to continue that peaceful coexistence. I've had the joy of experiencing it for the last 20 years or so. It's actually 23 years that I've lived in North Cornwall. And I will tell you that all my life I've been looking for a place to live. I've been looking for the right place, and when I came over Town Street and saw the church, the North Cornwall Church, and saw that area, I just, like, my heart flew, and I said, this is where I have to live. It took me about 8 years to find the piece of property where I could build a house, thanks to Joe Ellis and his wife Barbara, who sold me a piece of land, and I could build a house there. And I love this community. I am, however, extremely concerned about the proposal's vision to invite in the public into their Town Street farm for alcohol drinking and maybe in the future events. We did not know, Anna, until today that events at this point would not be allowed by the regs. And we would very much hope that that would not be changed, as has been already said, that big events there would really be changing the neighborhood a lot. We can't foresee what the adverse effects would be, but we can't foresee how many people would come in. And you know the expression, build it and they will come. We don't know. We don't know, the Ridgeways don't know, P&Z doesn't know, nobody knows, even the town planner does not know how many people might be coming in to consume this alcohol. And if indeed, like in Great Britain, people are driving around from all over the place to come into places, it could be a lot of people. We don't know, so we have concerns about that. Maybe you all can figure out what the stipulations would be to keep any problems from rising. But research that was submitted by Chad Cooper already to you, I think you all have it in your possession. It shows that the other Connecticut cideries and wineries are not situated in residential areas. And their towns are now encumbered, maybe not Goshen, but their towns are encumbered by lawsuits resulting from problems that have been leading to major expense for taxpayers. So we want to make sure that all of those things are covered. So I ask that P&Z consider that approving this precedent, as a precedent, as it's now set, be given very, very serious consideration. Thank you again for listening to our concerns.
And thank you for your testimony. Ian, you had letters to read? All right. I think you had your hand up.
Okay, well, I'll go. My name is Diane Ingersoll. I live at 136 Town Street. The latest compromise the Ridgeways offer with the weekend, especially Sunday openings, still does not address the fact that all the adjacent neighbors, everyone, is opposed to this. They do not want a bar tasting room entertainment venue open at all in our residential neighborhood. Making cider is one thing, but inviting the public into an entertainment venue where alcohol will be served is a totally different situation and unacceptable. There will be no peace in peaceful North Cornwall if this permit is allowed.
I was taking notes and hadn't expected you to stop so soon. Come.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Roxana Robinson, and I live at 218 Town Street in the house built by my grandfather. I've been coming here all my life. I'm a Scoville, so I have a long connection to farming in Cornwall, and I support it. I love the community here. I love the landscape, and I grew up among farmers, and my family has been farming here since 1760. I'm responding to the Ridgeway request to establish a cidery that would offer for consumption on site alcohol. So we all like the Ridgeways. We love having them as neighbors. We support them, and we know how much they support the community, and we're grateful for that. But many of us have reservations about this project. Nobody that I know would resist the idea of a cider mill making sweet cider. The issue is alcohol, and as everybody knows, alcohol changes behavior. So that sort of changes the idea. It's very different selling alcohol from selling vegetables. Nobody would complain about the Ridgeway's wonderful farm stand, open 24 hours a day, honor system. It's wonderful. But giving 12 ounces of alcohol away and then offering alcohol on the premises for sale, for consumption on the premises, is a very different matter. And none of the proposals that I've seen have in writing the amount of each unit. We've heard verbally that sometimes it was 12 and sometimes it was 8 ounces, but that's a big drink. And if there's more than one of those offered to a customer, we still don't know about that, That's a lot of alcohol. The Ridgeway's right, we don't believe that the farm store would add much traffic due to its limited hours. And our customers would largely continue to be Cornwall residents. But of course, as Betty said, the Ridgeways don't know who their customers would be. And if the cidery appears on Google Maps, people will come from all over the region. And they are hoping for a lot of people because we know that, and we know that because of the 2 driveways, which would not be necessary if there were a small number of people. So I'm torn, and I really admire the people who stood up for the farming community. I stand up for the farming community. I want farmers to continue to thrive in Cornwall. I want them to be imaginative and bring innovation. And I just jib at the idea of consuming and offering for free alcohol in a residential community. There, as Betty said, and as the article in the Hartford Courant showed, there are a lot of problems with cideries and wineries in the region. And alcohol changes behavior. And who's going to enforce rules if the rule is no drinking on site? Supposing somebody starts drinking on site, then who is supposed to stand up for that, against that? So that's my concern. It's a question of alcohol. I'm glad to hear that the events are no longer on the table. Those were a concern as well, but if there are no events, there's no concern. I hope that, and I appreciate the changes that the Ridgeways have already made in their proposal. We all appreciate that. We also just want to point out the fact that in the regulations is a stipulation that that a project should not diminish, the activity on a project would not diminish the value of the surrounding properties. And real estate brokers have told us that the sale of alcohol in a commercial entity in a residential area would definitely affect the property values in the neighborhood. So that's a concern of ours, and I'm sure it would be a concern of yours. So I hope that we can work out something that will allow the Ridgeways to thrive and that the rest of the neighbors to be happy. And I'm interested that you're also curious about the Green Hill Lake Association. They don't sell alcohol. They don't give out any free samples. It's just like your house. If you want to bring alcohol and drink it, you can. Thank you very much.
All right, Ian. Then Joe. I'm hoping we can be done by 8:30. We have 3 other public hearings this evening.
Okay. Unless I get 12 minutes like the presentation by the guy from Goshen. I won't take it.
The applicant has no limits.
The applicant has no
Does not have any 4-minute limits, Ian.
All right, testing, 1, 2, 3. I was asked to read some letters from people who won't be here. This is from John and Ann Coughlin on Cogswell Road. Dear committee, we are writing in response to the Ridgeway request for a special permit to operate a cidery/farm store at their farm on Town Street. We like and admire the Ridgeways, and we have always supported their farm stand with pleasure. We do not feel we can support this plan. We believe that a project involving the sale of alcohol in a residential neighborhood, especially one involving public events that will attract crowds, is not appropriate for this area. North Cornwall is a quiet place, and everyone who lives there enjoys this quiet. Property values here are dependent on the peaceful rural beauty of the place. A real estate broker has advised us that the introduction of a commercial venue selling alcohol and drawing crowds would adversely affect the values of neighboring properties to a significant degree. The town regulations direct the committee not to permit the uses that would diminish the value of neighboring properties. We take this issue very seriously. We respectfully ask you to follow the guidelines in your regulations and to deny this request for a venue selling alcohol and drawing public crowds. Many thanks for your consideration. I have copies for everybody. The next letter is we pass those out to the...
I will make sure they get passed up.
You will pass that
I will make sure they get passed up. Yes.
tonight?
Yes, later on I will do. Not right now.
Just checking. The next letter is from Mary Ellen and Andre Geiser, and it's basic. I'll just submit this to you, and you can pass that out as well.
Okay.
And the final one is from the Joneses. We believe that gathering.
Jones is a pretty common name.
I'm sorry.
Their full name.
From Bart Jones.
Okay.
We believe that the granting of this proposal submitted by Ian and Jane Ridgway for an alcoholic cidery and events venue in Town Street would establish a legal precedent that would be damaging to the community in the future. As Ian Ridgway has indicated in his revised proposal, the only way for this project to succeed would be through increasing the cidery hours and expanding the events. Granting a permit for an alcoholic cidery and events venue, even a small one on Town Street, would pave the way for other permits for larger events. We believe that this path is contrary to the spirit of the Cornwall. Large noisy alcoholic fueled events are deeply inappropriate in a quiet residential area and would fundamentally change the nature of North Cornwall. The committee should encourage commercial activity in the commercial zone. We recommend the P+Z reject this application. Go ahead. Okay. And then I think these are posted. The Ridgways have largely soft-sold this soft start to this enterprise that they're purporting to do. But what we found is a lot of these articles, some of you've seen them maybe to date, indicate that in other areas these things start and they grow. And maybe Ian's successful at this and maybe he's not. And maybe there's another buyer that comes by and buys the farm and takes it to the next level. And that's what we're concerned about, what this thing will grow into in the long run. We're planting a seed here that's going to germinate on this farm, and what is it going to grow into? And we're concerned about that. And we hope that you are concerned about it, and we thank you for your consideration of our concerns.
We already have all of those.
I've got
We've all read them.
They're ready.
I brought you one this time. You should check out.
They were.
I know that Karen's overworked. Sometimes hard to distribute.
I once again reassure everybody that this commission struggles to be fair. We aim to be fair. We're listening to everyone equally. And we will be very serious when we discuss this application, contrary to some implications rendered by some of the audience. Joe, I'll bring this to you. I get it.
My name is Joe Ellis. We live at 158 Town Street. Like so many of you here in this room, we're friends with the Ridgways. They're our next door neighbors. I've had wonderful relationships with them over the years, and they're wonderful people, as we all know, and we want to see them succeed. We empathize with all the questions that have been asked here. This is clearly one of these NIMBY issues. I suspect that the faces would be different if this were next door. We're now going to be the closest. It used to be the Ingersolls. Now I think we're going to be the closest. The planner before talked quite a bit about Goshen, and I keep thinking about Goshen. I think about Goshen a lot when I drive through it on the way from Torrington. And you come around, there's a big curve there, and you come around there, and what do you come up and see? Action wildlife. And I keep imagining, it probably didn't happen this way, it may not have happened this way, and I don't know what happened, But I keep thinking of a room like this with a lot of people in there talking about, yes, this is going to be a petting zoo. We'll have a few animals over there. It will employ people. All the arguments that have been made for economic growth and keeping people in Cornwall, which all of us agree with. I don't think there's a person that disagrees with this in this room. But, I'm sorry? In any case, and that's the seed that Eden, I think, said was planted. It may not go the wrong way, but it might go the wrong way. And we have to be concerned about that. We are going to be looking out on this. I'm not suggesting we're going to end up with something like Gastric and Wildlife Foundation, but that's an agricultural use that was approved by Bush at some point in the past, and we know where it is now. And I feel like that Indian in the old environmental ads with a tear comes down my face when I come around that curve. There's this wonderful old house across the field. You probably have all, a white house there. It's lovely and it's peaceful, and that used to be a beautiful, beautiful spot. And now, you know what it looks like now. So understand what we're looking at here.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Attorney Williams. Maybe you should move to Cornwall. You've become a familiar face now.
Good. Can I just hand some info before I take up my turn?
Certainly.
I think this is what I included in the packages.
Okay. Can you help me? Thank you. Thank you. Good evening again, Madam Chair and Commission members.
Could you move that way so you can
sure,
see
sure,
the
sure,
video?
sure.
Otherwise, it would just be.
I don't want to deprive everyone of that. Thank you. Joe Williams, I'm a land use attorney of 29 years in the state of Connecticut, partner in the law firm of Shipman and Goodwin in Hartford. And thank you for the opportunity again. I represent Ian Ingersoll and his wonderful wife, who are the next door neighbors to this project, and as you heard, are opposed to it. I just handed in something that I should have done last time, and I saw on the website some of the pages were flipped around, so I brought printouts of the email and of the 2 cases and of the statute that I emailed in for the last meeting so that all of you can have a printed copy if that's helpful for you. Yep. And my comments from the last 2 hearings stand. I will not repeat them. I know you have other hearings and we have a time limitation. So I just wanted to address the additional information from tonight. And really the key point is I learned a little bit more about, it went by quickly, but some of the information about there being relatively few in comparison to the overall plan. Apple trees currently on the site, there are some, but I heard there were 40, I think, apple trees planted on the site currently, and 350 apple trees are going to be planted. And as the application said from the beginning, it'll be several years, 5 years I think it was, before the property is fully producing all of the apples that will make the amount of cider that is proposed to be produced. And that right there tells you that this is not an accessory use to farming on this property, because if you just take the 350 apples that's going to be added and you compare it to 40 apple trees planted on site right now, that means to reach the level of processing and production of cider that's proposed under this application, they need nine times more apple trees. And as I submitted in the case law, and somebody said it was an elephant sitting on a mouse, but I'm not exactly sure what to make of that, but it is the law of the state of Connecticut. An accessory use, and that's how this is being proposed. The cider making is proposed to be accessory to the apple growing on the site. The accessory use has to be subordinate and incidental to the principal use of farming. And nobody can say with a straight face, and respectfully I submit to you, no one could conclude with a straight face, that a manufacturing or processing operation of 9 times the amount of the principal use is subordinate and incidental to the principal use. It can't be until those apples, the amount of apples that will be made in the cider, are being grown on the site. So at most, under the definition of what it means to be an accessory use throughout the state of Connecticut, at most, cider being made from the amount of apples that are grown on site right now is what could be accessory to apple growing on the site. And I heard, and I was aware of the state definitions of what it means to be a farm cidery, but that's not controlling your decision. That's a totally separate legal regime, if you will, that doesn't apply to zoning. That's just a question about whether they qualify for some state program as a farm cidery, but that doesn't make it a subordinate use and an accessory use for zoning purposes. So that's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further comments? Yes? Are you a Dolan too?
I'm not. Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Jackson. I live at 134 Dibble Hill Road. I just want to speak on behalf of the Ridgeways here. I'm new to town, as you know, compared to everyone else around here. I've only been here for 2 years. I'm a young business owner in town. It is hard to succeed in a town like this. It's hard to afford to live here. And if you have someone willing to be here and build something and want to stay in this town and grow a family here, I think that should be encouraged, especially with what they're doing already in the community on their farm. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, you've already spoken once. Do you have something more to say?
I do have something else if given the opportunity.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to speak the first time who wanted to speak before we move into the second time? All right, come forward. And we're going to have to move on very soon, folks.
Richard Bramley. This is a simple but unscientific but thought-provoking survey to give perspective on cider consumption, and I think dispels some of the concerns. I think it does. So here's the survey. No hands are required, it's just thought, and you can just think of it yourself. In the past 7 days, who has personally consumed a glass of wine or knows someone who has consumed a glass of wine? That's the first question. In the past 7 days, who has personally consumed a glass of beer or knows somebody who has consumed a glass of beer? And the third question is, in the past 7 days, who has personally consumed a glass of hard cider or knows someone who has consumed a glass of hard cider? I would contend that the answers to questions 1 and 2 are 100%. And everyone knows somebody who has had some wine or some beer in the last week. And I would contend the answer to number 3 is maybe 10%, maybe 15% at best. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who would like to have a second chance?
This is really a question, and I have been to the other meetings, and I'm just curious because the original Ridgeway proposal included events. The second version of it said 4 events a year with live music and food trucks, then that was retracted. If events were never legal here, I'm just curious as to how that got so far without being addressed in the town. Could you tell me?
Could you identify yourself?
Sorry, it's Roxana Robinson. Roxana Robinson. I'll sit down, I'm just curious.
I don't have an answer to your question. Sorry. I don't. I seriously don't. Anybody else?
Can people ask questions from the audience?
No.
Right.
All questions to the commission have to be in writing, and the reason is we want to give accurate answers. We want to give well-researched answers, not off the top of our head answers. And I could give such an answer tonight, but I'm not going to. Okay, if everyone has had a chance to ask their questions, I will now move on. If the commissioners have any questions, either for the applicant or amongst ourselves. All right, James.
Ian, did you have plans still for stipulating the delivery of other off-site apples or the removal of waste products? Is that still supposed to happen just one day a week? I didn't recall that was ever on the document.
Would you repeat his question?
Yeah. So the question was about having a single day to remove waste and import apples, and I don't believe that was part of the original application. We did talk about in our septic application having different days, like we're not going to be making cider and washing and doing everything when the cidery is open, and the distinctions are made during the Torrington Health application.
Thanks. Also, the lighting that you had mentioned in your report, that at no times are you going to be open after sunset to the public, right? So in off-season hours, basically you wouldn't be open until 7 o'clock in November. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you for the clarifying questions. Commissioners, do you have any others?
Reminder, if we close this public hearing, then we cannot ask any other questions for the public, so now's your chance.
If you want to look at the site plan, there are copies, so if any commissioner doesn't have it up on their screen and would like to revisit the site plan, there are copies. May I make a statement of clarification?
Thank you, I appreciate it very much.
I'm Janelle Mullen, I'm the consultant planner for the town of Cornwall, and just a statement of clarification that I would like to make around this question that involves events. So pursuant to the regulations, it's Article 4, permitted uses. By special permit in residential zones, events that are educational, religious, philanthropic, excluding correctional institutions, operated by a nonprofit or government entity, is the only mention of any sort of event type of use. And during the deliberation, during the public hearing, the discussion of events was not so much posed to the commission, it was discussion amongst the public. So just to clarify why that discussion continued, it was during the public hearing of information gathering from the public.
And since we're on this theme, I'll clarify something for people. One of the things that we learn as land use commissioners is that in Connecticut, zoning regulations are called permissive. I've heard lawyers use this word. It is completely counterintuitive to what you might think it means. What it means is, if something is not specifically mentioned as being allowed in our zoning regulations, then it is not allowed. So, I think it's a hard concept to grasp, but I just wanted to inform you about that too. I'm going to ask the commission if anyone would like to make a motion to close this public hearing on SP 257.
So moved.
Moved by Bruce Bennett, second by Stephen Siccardi. All in favor, could you raise your hands?
Aye.
Oh, I keep forgetting about discussion. Take that back.
Are we allowed to discuss this?
Yes.
You may. Now is your chance. Sorry,
If there's
I'm in a
questions for the
hurry.
applicant, I would absolutely encourage any commissioner, ask your questions now.
So I have a lot of questions that are not necessarily for the applicant, but for the commission as part of, I'm trying to, as part of discussion. Is that something that we can talk about now? When do we talk about that?
That's when you get into your discussion.
When we are together discussing the application,
Okay.
those questions will be answered.
But if information is lacking that you believe you can gather from questions to the applicant this evening, I would highly encourage you to ask them. I have a question. All right. She's going to lead the way. So I don't have the site plan in front of me. If I recall, there's about 12 parking spaces proposed. And those 12 parking spaces, when filled, there's overflow. Is that my understanding of the site?
That's correct.
If parking were to only occur on site, which is pursuant to the regulations, approximately how many vehicles can be visiting the site for the purposes of visiting the farm cidery at one given time?
If the field is dry, there's a lot of spots to park.
You want like a maximum?
For the purposes of discussion, if you could provide the maximum in dry conditions for the commission.
If we needed to fit every car, maximizing everything, there's 2 hayfields that are a combination of 12 acres. So how many cars can fit in 12 acres?
Are the hayfields hayed?
But yeah, I mean, it depends what we're trying to do. That's not what we're going to do because we're not trying to turn those into a parking lot.
The question is, so in addition to the 12 parking spaces as indicated on the plan, would the applicant propose a vehicle cap based on your topography and the working farm?
I think we could, consider having a cap because we don't want every car to fit. We don't want the entire fields to fit, like to be full of cars.
But at this time, the applicant has ample room for parking.
Yes.
Commissioners, any other questions? James has another one. You talk loud, so I'm not going to bring you.
How do you envision handling the situation if more people are showing up to visit the cidery than you're prepared to handle?
Yeah, so we have a couple ideas on if that happens. One is if we consistently have way more people than we can handle, we can look at reserving the spaces to limit that number. We also feel that if there's a point where that happens, then we can think about if we're outgrowing the site. And there's been talk of moving to business commercial zones in town. You know, if every time I open, there's 200 cars on Pound Street, that's a lot of cider I'd have to make, and that would be way more than we could handle on Town Street. So we would have to really look at things.
Bruce?
So,
You're soft here.
I am?
Yeah. Your voice is soft.
That was pretty tough. I'd like to clarify this lighting thing. So you say that you are not going to be open when it gets dark, therefore you won't need any more lighting, is that correct?
Yeah.
And yet you will be open sometimes in the wintertime. That's going to limit your hours significantly.
Yeah, so the hours we have asked for is not the hours every week of the year. This is the maximum hours we could be open under this application. So we don't know, I mean, so 18 hours is the max we are asking for.
Okay.
And seasonally, it'll be less when there's less light out, when people, all that stuff.
All right, and you also said that the lighting will conform to building code. Does building code have security light?
As this planner and very familiar with the building regulations, he has to have a light where there's an entrance and an exit. That's the building code. And those will be full cutoff fixtures. And my God, he's put this building so far back, there's no way a light over a door is going to be seen from off the site.
So it's not a light that's covering the area.
The light that you are required to have by building code for an entrance exit.
Okay.
Security lighting.
Well, that's not security lighting.
It's
That's
safety
lighting. Safety
yeah.
lighting. Safety lighting. And can you clarify for me, because I'm a little confused about the whole alcohol thing, and I think it's an important issue that everybody's dealing with. And I don't drink, so I don't know a lot about how these, wineries work. although I did visit one. And what they do is they give a tray of multiple types of wine in little jars, and then people can consume those. Can they consume multiple little trays of wine?
You can consume multiple, yes, but you're not, especially as Richard explained as a permittee, we are not going to be, it's not an endless supply, and we have the right at any time, even without serving anybody, to say no. If someone shows up inebriated and they want to buy alcohol, we don't have to sell it to them if they're too inebriated at any point during that process.
So this little tray is something that's given for free?
No, it's not. The cider, if you want to consume cider on site, is a retail transactional, whatever, you buy it.
Okay, so can then someone buy a bottle of cider, hard cider, and drink it on site?
You're not gonna be able to buy a bottle, and you have to buy it by the glass or by the flight.
But they can buy a glass of cider, multiple glasses of cider.
Yeah, if you want a bottle, you can buy a bottle and you take it home, but.
Not going to open the bottle.
Not going to open the bottle.
Just if I could clarify, because I have a lot of familiarity with the wineries in Goshen and in the farm brewery in Cobra. This is not a bar. People are not going there to get drunk. The whole thing is, it's an experience. And young people, especially today, are looking for an experience. They're going to visit a farm. They're going to taste some cider. They're going to buy some farm products. And oftentimes, there are children involved because it's an experience. And that's what's the beauty of these new enterprises that are popping up around the state. They're selling the farm experience.
Can I add one thing to that? So I had a conversation with the guy, John, who runs Norbrook Brewery.
John O'Clair.
John O'Clair. And he operates at a scale that's much larger than anything we are going to do. And he's been open for 5 years. And he said in that time, with hours longer than we were proposing, he has one person that was a problem, and they showed up a problem, and he bought him a sandwich and he drove him home. He says people do not come to these places to get drunk because, one, you spend $8 or more on a glass, and it's in the early afternoon, so people that are getting drunk are going to find places to do it cheaper and into the hours of the night, which is not going to be possible with this proposal.
You used the word flight. You explained that to us, but I don't know that Bruce was at that meeting. A flight is the tray with 8 small samples.
Or less.
Or 4, or whatever, however the flight. But Ian mentioned 8 twice.
So it's usually a different type.
Each sample is different.
A sample of all, whatever the different types of product are.
And I have one more question. I can speak. What else are you selling in the farm store?
Yeah, that's a great question. So,
Repeat it for everyone.
he wants to know what else will be in the farm store. So we have a large variety of seasonal produce. We have both beef and pork. We produced 500 gallons of maple syrup last year. There'll obviously be soft cider, there'll be hard cider. You can get a nice Ridgeway Farm shirt, maybe even a sweatshirt, maybe a hat, and other value-added products. We make pesto and salad dressing and things like that.
The hours that you have been discussing in this meeting are specifically for the tasting room. Will the farm stand be open separate? Farm store. Because your farm stand right now is open 24 hours a day. So you're not limiting your farm store hours. Farm stand.
We envision the hours to be the same in the farm store with this proposal. And the stand is going to be the same. The stand is a stand, and that will be there. And the farm store will be open when the tasting room is open.
Okay.
Press commissioners.
I have a question. This could be a good one while we have Marty Punner here. The question is just, so I'm looking at the site plan, the proposed cider barn is 30 by 80 feet. The tasting room, it's my understanding, is not in that full size because there's refrigeration and storage and farm store. Based on what it sounds like preliminary building permits, do you have a sense of the occupancy of this tasting room? Or the number of guests that you can basically be serving at a given time?
With our Torrington Area Health approval, we are allowed 15 seats inside. 15, 1-5.
So that's a seated assembly area then, you're not talking about standing assembly room in terms of occupancy load?
Yeah, I mean, there'll be 15 people that they count them by the head. So that, yeah, 15 people in there. It's not going to be a standing room sort of thing, so.
Your choice. Yes, you mentioned, I think the maximum with one bathroom occupancy per building code that you could have is 49 people, I believe.
Depends on the square footage and
the
use.
But there's also there's a flow rate for this use. So they say, I think it's either 5 or 15 gallons a head that comes in. They have a calculation and they say, so like the fire code, I could fit a lot more people. But the septic and Torrington Area Health says no because of the use of the building. It's not just retail.
There will probably be a sign stating the occupancy load for the building of 15 people or of the tasting room. In there.
I think that's an excellent point that Janelle made. The size of the building, that certainly is going to dictate how many people are going to be there. I mean, we're not talking about a building that's 10 times that size. It's a small building. It houses the farm store, it houses the equipment to do the cidery, and an accessory apartment, all within that 30 by 80 building.
Commissioners, anything more for discussion now?
So the apartment, which is upstairs in the barn, what's in the rest of the upstairs of the barn?
There's room. Okay.
I'm getting tired of this. You
Staying here. So the rest of it is room for storage and office space tied into the cider farm store area.
So you'll have office upstairs as well as residential?
So it's, yeah, I mean, it's just tied into the, yeah, I guess, yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Ask it. If you have further questions.
Go ahead and ask the question.
Well, I don't know whether that's,
I will answer the question that
Okay.
you're about to ask.
All right.
This farm is not a home business. It's not a home-based business. So our rules about home-based businesses are not pertinent. You're thinking about a home office,
Yeah.
which is a by right use in residential homes in Cornwall. So either way, it's covered. Okay?
Okay, but in this particular building, because it's agricultural,
Correct.
there's no regulation.
Correct.
There is a regulation. There are regulations. It's a home office.
Oh, so we're calling this a home
We're not
office.
mute on this point. It is a home office.
I'm saying it isn't. But I defer to you. I certainly defer to Janelle.
Farm, home office.
Whatever. There's no, it's a by right use.
It's a by right use.
Yes, it is.
If it complies with the no appointments, no clients,
Right.
all of those
Can I
parameters.
ask one more question of one clarification? The bottles. So you will be selling bottles or cans or maybe just bottles.
you don't intend to sell them for consumption on the premises?
Correct.
Okay.
Any further discussion before we call the motion? The motion was to close this public hearing for SP 257. All right?
Can I need to remind everybody that everything that has been submitted is closed. It's the file. Anything that comes in via email or whatever.
Once this hearing is closed, we can't accept any more written correspondence.
Or email correspondence.
There was some correspondence that was not sent out to the commissioners in time for this public hearing, but they will nevertheless receive it so that they can peruse it before we have our final discussion about whether to pass the application. All in favor of closing this public hearing, put your hands up, please. This was a unanimous decision. This hearing is now closed. I am going to give a few seconds for people who want to leave to go, and then we're going to proceed with the rest of the public hearings. Is there any reason why we can't change the order of the agenda and put the little bill next? Make a motion. We'll have a 5-minute break.
Anna, I'm going to leave this on.
Shut it off for now. Just for now.
Part one then.
Yeah.